So let's take a look at each of these steps in more detail. The first thing to do is find a model suitable to be animated. I'm going to load the model Dino.Max. This is actually included with this training set. It's in the tutorials folder. And this model is of a little character, a little alien sort of dinosaur character. Let's maximize the viewport, and you can do that with the min-max toggle button. Maximize the currently selected viewport, which is the perspective view, and let's use the arc rotate to take a look at this model from all sides. He's fairly simple. There's no holes in him. It's all one piece. So far he looks pretty good for being animated. What you can also do is right click on the perspective viewport label and choose edged faces, and that'll give you a view of how the faces are distributed on the model. Now this is very important when choosing a model for animation. What you want is a model like this that has rectangular shaped faces for the most part that are evenly spaced. You don't want any long skinny triangular faces. Those are generally hard to animate because they don't bend well, I guess you could say, and you're going to want to bend this model's elbows and shoulders and knees and so on. So you want something that has these nice evenly spaced faces that will be easy to bend and move around. Now the other thing you can do is take a look at how the model is created. In this case we'll select the model and go to the Modify panel, and you can see that this is an editable poly. Now what this means is that this has sub-objects. We can see by clicking the plus. We can edit this model by changing the vertices and polygons and so on. Sometimes you're going to get a model that you're going to need to edit a little bit to make it easier to animate. In this case this one's fine, so we'll just leave him the way it is. Also you can take a look at the number of faces the model has. The fewer faces, the quicker it's going to update when you're animating. You want enough faces so there's enough detail to animate well, but not so much that it takes too long to update on the screen. So we can go to the File menu and choose Summary Info. And here you can see the faces selection here, or rather the faces display. And this model has 2,360 faces, which is pretty low. It's a nice low number. We'll be able to animate this model in real time on the screen. We won't have to keep hiding the model and then unhiding it and rendering. We can just play it right on the screen. We'll be able to see the animation right away. That's very helpful when you're animating a character. So let's get rid of our edged faces. We right click and turn it off, and then click the min-max toggle again to go back to our 4 viewport display. And next we're going to create the biped to start animating the model. So now we're going to create the biped skeleton. The easiest way to explain the biped is to go ahead and make one, and then I'll go over all the parts of it. So you want to go to the Create panel and click Systems and click Biped. And then click and drag in the front viewport or the perspective view, and you're going to create this skeleton. And make him about the same height as the character. Can be a little taller or a little smaller. And let's go ahead and take a closer look at the biped here. He's got spine links and arms, legs, feet. He's built like a human skeleton, but you can easily alter this skeleton to look more like an alien or an animal or whatever you like. And in this case, we're going to eventually alter this skeleton so that it fits our Dino character perfectly. Now taking a look here in the front viewport, if we zoom in here to this bit that's selected, that's what's called the center of mass. Let's zoom out a little so you can see that better. That's right there at the center of the biped's pelvis. That's the controlling object for the entire biped. When you want to move the biped or rotate the entire biped around, this is the object that you select. Everything is eventually linked to that. So let's take a look at what our biped is created of. If you scroll down on your Create panel, you'll see that there's all these different settings for neck links, spine links, and so on. You can actually give the biped more spine links and more fingers, less fingers, and so on. The best way to do this is not necessarily on this panel because like other create panels, as soon as you click on something else, you can't change anything here. You have to go to another panel. Now with most geometry in 3ds Max, you would go to the modify panel, but with a Character Studio Biped, you want to go to the motion panel. That's where all the controls are. If you click motion, you'll see that you've got all these nice colorful buttons that aren't usually there in regular old 3ds Max. These are all your Character Studio Biped buttons. Now we want to pose this skeleton to match our character, and to do that we want to be in this certain mode called figure mode. So you have to click figure mode here to turn it on. Now it's not going to change the display or anything like that. All that's changed is this button is on, but it's very important to have this on while you're posing the skeleton. So go ahead and make sure that's on. Now let's go down and take a look at the different structure elements for the biped. We have 4 spine links right now. I think that 3 would be plenty for this character, so we can go ahead and change it to 3. Leg links are fine. 3 refers to a thigh and a calf and a foot, which is what we want. Fingers. Our character has a thumb and 3 fingers, which totals out to 4 fingers. Finger links. Let's take a look here in the left view and we can see what those finger links are. Basically, a finger link is one of the areas between 2 joints in your finger. It's a bone extension, and this particular character really just needs 2 finger links. Now as far as toes are concerned, if your character has sort of feet that are almost like shoes like this, you really only need 1 toe, and you're going to make it a big wide toe. So we're going to change this to 1 toe and 1 toe link. And the skeleton is pretty much ready to be fitted to the character. So the first step in posing the biped is to move the biped's center of mass to the appropriate and corresponding location on the model. So the center of mass is this little doohickey here, as we mentioned, and you just use the regular old move tool and you go ahead and move it there. Now you recall, over here we have figure mode on. This you should definitely do when you have figure mode on. If you don't have it on, turn it on and do it again. Now let's check in our other viewports. And we want to make sure that the center of mass is right about, sort of inside the model, inside his belly, across from his belly button. Right about in that spot. Maybe down a little bit more. And centered right on the character. Okay, now it looks a little strange. The legs are sticking out and nothing seems to be in the right place, but we'll straighten it out shortly. Now one thing that's helpful to do here before we pose the biped to fit the model is let's select the model, and we're going to turn this to a smooth and highlights viewport, but we're also going to put this model in see-through mode so we can see what's going on with the biped. And the way you can do that is you just hit Alt-X on your keyboard. And now we have X-ray vision, and we can see right through the model and see the biped. Now it's also a good idea to freeze the model so you don't accidentally pick it up and move it while you're trying to pose the biped. So I'm going to right-click on the model and just pick Freeze Selection. So now it's frozen and see-through, and we can go ahead and work with the biped more easily with the model. Now this is a good time to save. So let's go ahead and do a File and a Save As. Now what I like to do when I'm saving as I'm going along, we're going to save several versions of this. So what you can do is click this plus button here. And what that does is that adds the number 1 to the end of the file name, as you can see up here, Dino01. And the next time you save, you can click the plus again and it will save it to Dino02, and then the next time to Dino03, and so on. So you don't save over your work, and you're saving a new version each time, but you don't have to keep typing in the number. So the first step in posing the biped is to pose the legs. So let's maximize the front viewport here, and we'll get a closer look at the leg area. And let's start with one leg. We want to rotate this into place. So we're going to use our select and rotate, and as long as the figure mode is on, which it is, then we're all set. And we'll start rotating the leg. Now if you've got angle snap on, you want to turn it off. It's going to be a lot easier to move it into place. So you rotate the leg into place and get it going down the center of the leg as best you can. We'll talk about what you do if it won't go down the center in a minute. We'll get to that later. But for now, just get it going down the center as best you can, and then you want to use your scale and scale the leg along its length. Now we want the length of this thigh to end right about where the character's knee is. You want that little round thing right where his knee is. That's pretty close. Then we're going to scale the calf. And we want to get that little ball right around where the ankle joint is. And then we take the foot and scale it so that it goes down to the ground. Now obviously this isn't quite right yet. It's not going down the center of the leg, but again we'll fix that up in a minute. What we want to do with this now is we've only done one leg, and we want to get the other leg to look more like this short one. So we can select the short leg and come over here to the copy paste rollout, and our posture button is clicked, which is what we want. We're going to copy the posture of this leg to the other side. So we can click copy posture, which copies the posture of the selected leg parts, which is the thigh, calf, and foot. And then we're going to use paste posture opposite, and that will paste it to the other side. And look, there it is, right up there. Okay, so let's take a look at these two legs. We've got a little bit of a strange thing going on here. Even though the center of mass is pretty much at the center of the body, the legs aren't lined up. So let's double check the center of mass. Let's go back to wireframe mode so we can select it and see it a little bit better. And let's look at this here. Now the center of mass is lined up with the center line of the body. So it doesn't seem like we should move it around. It's in a pretty good spot. But the legs still aren't lined up. So what this means is that this model wasn't created exactly symmetrically, and this is going to happen to you from time to time, so you need to know how to fix it up. So what you do in that case is you just go ahead and rotate each leg individually so that the thigh and calf go down the center. Now if that doesn't work and you can't get them to go exactly right, another option you have is to select the pelvis and to use your scale and scale the pelvis on its local z-axis. And that also gives you a wider stance or a narrower stance. Let's try making this just a little bit wider. Might make things work a little better. And now we rotate the leg back to go down the center. And there, that's pretty good, just the way it is. And we'll work some more on the feet a little later on, but this is fine for now. And this is a good time to save. So let's go ahead and go File, Save As, and click the plus to save Dino 02. So now let's take a look at posing the spine and the arms. Now when you take a look at what you've done so far, it looks pretty odd. You've got this skeleton partially parked inside a character. Don't worry about it, just work with one part at a time, and eventually it's all going to look very nice. Alright, so the next step is select all the parts of the spine, which are these three spine links right here, and we're going to do some scaling. Now the idea here is we're going to scale the spine down so that we can get the shoulders here lined up with the character's shoulders. So that's about right. Basically, you want these little balls here to be right at where the character's shoulder joint is. So this is where the character would flex their shoulder from. So let's take one of the arms and rotate that into place. So basically, posing the biped, you do a lot of rotating and a lot of scaling. Those are the two primary activities. Now that goes in pretty well. So let's copy and paste that to the other side. Now, if it didn't go in pretty well, if this wasn't going right down the center of the arm, the best thing to do is select the spine links and scale them again. You don't want to get all caught up in trying to rotate these arms to try to jam them into the armhole. Just scale the spine lengths to get this shoulder joint to line up. Alright, we're going to get to the arms a little later on. Right now the upper arm is okay, but the lower arm and the hands obviously need some work. But let's look at the neck now. So the neck link is this little link right in here, the one just above the top spine link. And basically we want to scale that so that the bottom of the biped head lines up with the character's chin. Now when we scale this up, we see that we've got this one very long neck link here, and wouldn't it be nice to have a couple of neck links in here so that we can animate the character's neck? Because right now his neck won't bend. There's only one link there. So what we can do is close up this copy-paste rollout, go back to our structure rollout, and we can actually add neck links at this point. So let's make 3 neck links. Now they're kind of long, so let's go ahead and select them. Oh, we selected the eyes. Don't want to do that. Here, let's freeze the eyes. Okay, now we can select the neck links and scale them down so the biped's chin and the character's chin are right about at the same spot. Now we're going to scale the head. Oops. Right up to the top of the character's head. Scale it out a little bit so it fills it out. Okay, this is a good time to save. We're going to do a file, save as, with a plus again. Now before we go on to the next step, let's just take the links that we can see that are posed pretty well, and we're going to scale them out to fill out the character. Now something happens here. When this upper spine link scales, it scales out the shoulders. So what you want to do is scale these shoulders back in. Select both of these links, which are called the clavicles. These two right here, up at the upper shoulder, are the clavicles. So we scale those back in. You could scale the lowest spine link, and it's not going to affect anything. And let's take a look at this one, scale it out a little bit. The sizes of these bones is going to affect the area around them that they influence when you animate the bones. So if you widen this out, it's going to affect the area around it. If it's too skinny, it's not going to affect the area around it automatically. You're going to have to do a lot of adjustment. But in general, you want to keep the biped inside the character mesh. Okay, so let's save it again. Save as with a plus. Now let's take a look at the model from the side view and see how our proportions are working out. If we take a look at the left viewport here, we can see a few obvious problems. Some of the stuff is a little too skinny. For example, the head doesn't need to go all the way out past the character's nose, but filling up the head most of the way. And let's take a look at this neck. It's not quite going up the center. However, the shoulder, it's almost in the center. We can take this topmost spine link and rotate it forward just a little bit. Okay, now the shoulder node is going through the center of the shoulder, and the neck is going up more the center of the neck. Let's see how the head looks. Looks pretty good. Maybe we can scale it up a little bit more. There we go. Now the spine links aren't quite wide enough here. And the legs, they're not quite going through the center. So let's see, how are we going to fix that? Well, we could rotate the leg and make it go more through the center, but that's not really what we want. The hips need to be more forward. So what we need to do in this case is we need to take the center of mass and move it forward. The center of mass is diamond shaped, so we know we have it selected. And we're going to move it forward a little bit. bit more. Let's take a look. And now we're going to rotate this leg right through the center, and then rotate the bottom part of the leg. That looks pretty good. So let's do the same with the other leg. Alright, and now the spine is off. We need to rotate the spine back the way it came before. There we go. Now, as you can see, it's just a matter of working back and forth and back and forth. You have to scale and rotate until everything is fitting pretty well. Now with this foot, we need to scale this. And that toe there at the end, we've got this tiny little toe, and we want to scale that past the end of the toe and up a bit, and we can move it up. There. That'll work pretty well. Now we want to copy the foot and toe to the other side of the body. Just the foot and toe, though. Ooh, before we do that, let's take a look at this. See, the feet are turned out a little bit. You can see that in the top view. So with that foot selected, we can rotate that foot out a bit so it lines up better with the center of the foot. Can you see that? Let's take a closer look here in the top view. See that foot going straight down? Also, we want to scale the toe so it goes all the way across. And we could scale the foot even some more, and the toe. Alright, now let's copy and paste the toe and the foot to the other side. So I'm going to hold down Control, select this foot, go to my copy paste rollout, copy, paste opposite. And there we go. That's looking pretty good. Alright, and this is a good time to save. Save as with a plus. The only thing we really have left to do here are the arms and hands. So let's take a look at the top view for starters, and we can see that these elbows need to be rotated a bit. Oh, wrong way. There we go. And let's try just getting these lined up in the top view. And then let's take a look at the front view. And that looks alright, except they need to come down a little bit. I think if we rotate this, that will take care of it. Now, one of the things with a biped is that this lower arm here will only rotate in certain directions. We're trying to rotate this up and down and it won't go. It will rotate around the center like so, and it will also rotate this way to make the elbow bend, but you cannot rotate it in this other direction to try to rotate it down. This is a limitation imposed on bipeds by the developers so that you won't have the elbow bending in all kinds of strange directions. In reality, of course, your elbow does twist a little bit, but usually you can simulate that by animating the upper arm or some other part of the body. So let's take a look at this from the top again. And this elbow is bent too much. Let's come back. And from the front. Well, this might be about as good as it's going to get. So let's scale this back a bit. Scale this back to the wrist. And let's see how it looks at the top. That's not bad. Alright. Rotate this back a bit. From the front. Good. So now we have it looking good from the top and the front. Alright, let's take a look at this hand here. We'll rotate it so that the palm of the hand, this big blue part here, is centered on the hand. And then we want to take the base of each finger and move it so that it starts right about at the base of the finger, this line sort of going up through each finger. So this one here, this one is just about right, if you think about it going up, and this thumb goes here. Now you can only move the bases of the fingers. If you try to pick up a fingertip, it's not going to move. But you can move the base of the finger anytime. Okay, now you can take each one of these fingers and rotate them so they go up the direction of the finger. This might be a little easier if we first scale the hand a little bit. There we go. That's a little better. So let's rotate this finger. And this one, remember, we're just trying to get the finger to point up the center of the mesh finger. Do one thing at a time. You do the rotation, and then you do the scaling. Thumb's a little tricky because it's set up like a real thumb. It rotates in different directions than the actual finger does. So you might have to play around with it a little bit and get it to rotate in the direction you want. That's probably about right. Okay, now let's take all of these fingers, select them, and we're going to scale all of them on their widths, make them a little fatter, and we're going to make them a little longer. We want them to extend out past the ends of the fingertips. This is going to help you later on when you use the physique modifier. And again, the thumb you might need to do separately because it has different axes, different local axes than the fingers do. Sometimes the rotation can be a little tricky. There, that's about right. That's pretty good. Again, back and forth with scaling, rotating, scaling, rotating. Okay, from the top, this looks great. Now let's look at it from the front. Ooh, not so good. Okay, first thing we need to do is take the palm and rotate it down so it goes through the center of the hand. And we need to scale it. Give it a little bit of thickness. And now, let's look at it from the top. Oh, it's off now. Yeah, that's what happens. Okay, at this point, it's probably best for us to start working in an angled view. Now, we have a perspective view here that we could use. I'm going to press the U key on the keyboard. That's the letter U, and turn it into a user view. And that way, we can very easily zoom in on the hand here. It's going to be easier to work with in a user view. Now we can see a little better what's going on. And alright, we're trying to rotate around this, but it's kind of rotating around the center of the body. What you can do is change this arc rotate, click and hold, and pick the one that has a white circle at its center. The circle is filled with white. And when you choose that, when you rotate, it rotates around the selected object. So you can see much better what's going on. Okay, so we can see here these fingers need to be moved. Actually, the palm needs to be scaled even further to get the fingers. There we go. So the fingers start at the opening of the mesh fingers. And it's a matter of kind of looking around and picking something that needs to be done. Actually, the pinky doesn't look too bad. Probably could use some scaling. Scale that out. Scale that out a bit. And, you know, I'm just looking at the pinky here. It's a little flat. Maybe we can thicken it up a little. Make it fill out the finger a little better. So the pinky looks good, huh? Not too bad. Actually, it just needs one thing. It needs to rotate down a little bit. There. That's good. Alright, let's take a look at the middle finger. Now the fingers are kind of tough. You can see from all of this work we're doing on them, they're a lot more work than any other part of the body, and it's really just a matter of, you know, fiddling with them. Just a little scaling and a little rotating and a little moving, and then you look around some more and move them a little more. And there's no easy trick. There we go. Move that over a little. That doesn't look too bad. And we can rotate this down. Okay, so that middle finger looks pretty good. And again, we like the fact that the fingers are extending, the biped fingers are extending past the mesh's fingers. This is going to help us when we use physique later. Alright, let's look at the first finger. You know, it's probably better when you move if you change it to the local coordinate system. The rotation is going to automatically set itself to the local coordinate system, but moving might not. And rotating a little bit. Oh, have to rotate the base. And let's see how that looks. Oh, it's Mr. Flat Finger. And, not too bad. Now I'm being pretty particular with these fingers. If you didn't want the character to articulate its fingers at all, for example, if he's just walking along and his hands are in fists and he's just moving his hands along with his body, it doesn't matter that much. You wouldn't have to be this particular with the fingers. But if you wanted the character to do something like wave hello or play the piano or just do anything that had a little more articulation involved, you would have to be this particular with the fingers. Let's see how that looks. Oh, thumb got moved away. Okay. That thumb needs to be moved. Just going to make sure we do it in the right direction. And now it's too long. So here we're working back and forth again, back and forth. Now, of course, we're only working with one hand. And of course, as you've probably guessed, what we're going to do is copy and paste this to the other side. This is way too much work to do on the other side all over again. Just center this a little bit better. Now also, you might be tempted to just skip it and say, oh, this is too much work. I'm just going to throw the fingers in there, and however they go is how they go. But this will actually save you a lot of work later on if you spend a few minutes taking the time right now to do this correctly. All you're going to be spending is an extra 15 minutes or so, and it's going to save you tons of time later. All right, that looks good. Okay, so let's copy the entire arm. Let's copy the entire arm here. And on our copy-paste rollout, we copy and paste opposite. Now remember the problem we had earlier where the legs weren't symmetrical. We want to double check here, and just in case the hands weren't symmetrical, we want to make sure that they're okay here. And they look pretty good. Alright, so that's a go. Let's save it. File, Save As, Plus.